We
are
We are
cultivate.
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 Cultivate. We are Cultivate.
Hello and welcome to Ye Olde Crime, where we discuss the funny, strange, and obscure crimes of yesteryear. I'm your host, Lindsay Valenti, and with me is my sister and co-host, Maddie Stengel.
Hello.
Hi. It is morning.
It is morning.
We are recording this literally the day before it's supposed to come out. So,
What?
the story of my life.
Not us.
But it's fine. I have a corrections, Cubby.
Oh.
We never celebrated our 4th anniversary of the podcast, which was on June 3rd.
That's hilarious.
Like, I completely spaced it. And then
That's awesome.
I thought of it last week after we'd already recorded, because of course I did.
Right. Because that's when the universe reminds you of important things.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I need to make sure that I note it for our next episode because I can't wait until July and be like, by the way, last month.
That's so funny.
Such a Lindsay thing for me to do. But today's episode is in honor of the lovely Carrie Ann because
Karen.
her birthday is the day after this episode comes out.
Well, happy early birthday, which will be almost, it'll still be early. Yay.
Yeah.
Happy early birthday.
Happy early birthday, Carrie Ann. And she doesn't have any idea what I picked for her.
Ooh.
I was like, I would like to do something special for your birthday as like a thank you for being an amazing research assistant. What would you like? And she's been sending me topic ideas for a while, like prior to her being our research assistant. And
Right.
she's like, just pick something. And I was like, okay, I will. And I picked mummy medicine.
Mummy medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
This is gonna get gross.
It is. You're welcome.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Maybe don't eat while you're listening to this.
Definitely don't eat while you're listening to this.
All right, let's dive into it. So, information was pulled from the following sources: a 2023 Mental Floss article by Michelle Debskiak. I messed that up, but we'll just go with it. A 2022 USC Dornsife article by Margaret Crabble. 2021 The Serpent's Pen article by David Castleton. 2020 Medical News Today article by Maria Kohut, PhD. 2015 The Pharmaceutical Journal article by Peter Homan. 2014 Science History Institute Health and Medicine article by Mariel Carr. 2013 Organic Chemistry article by Barbara M. Schultz-Butcher, Ari Nissenbaum, and Jürgen Ruhlkurter. I tried. 2012 Smithsonian Magazine article by Maria Dolan. 1927 Proceedings of the Royal Society of Medicine article by Warren R. Dawson. Digit with Raven article, and 2 Wikipedia links.
Nice.
And links to all of these articles will be included in the show notes. Looking for more content? You can find us online at yeoldecrimepodcast.com. If you'd like to see pictures from this week's episode, not to mention bonus content and funny memes, make sure to follow us on Twitter at yeoldecrimepod and on Facebook and Instagram at yeoldecrimepodcast. On TikTok? Of course you are. Follow us at Ye Olde Crime Podcast. Before we dive into another exciting edition of cannibalism,
Great.
I need to start us off with some context. Medicine, as we've learned on this show, has come in many shapes and forms over the years.
Mm.
And in the case of mummy medicine, also known as mummia, its history began thanks to an incorrect translation of medieval Latin.
Oh no.
Yep.
So it was a mistake from the start.
Yeah.
Great.
According to the Oxford English Dictionary, the English etymologies of both mummia and mummy are derived from the medieval Latin term mummia, which originally came from an Arabic translation of mumia that was a form of bitumen used for medicinal purposes.
Mm.
Mum was a Persian term meaning wax, specifically the type used in the embalming process.
Got it.
Mumia was also another Persian term for a bitumen embalmed body.
Okay.
So, what's bitumen? Bitumen is a byproduct of petroleum.
Hmm.
It's a thick, sticky, and adhesive binding agent. Bitumen is resistant to water and oil and typically used as a binding agent for asphalt, such as the kind used for roads, parking lots, and driveways.
Oh. And they would put this on bodies to wrap them.
Mhm.
Ugh.
Fun fact, it was even listed in the book of Genesis as one of the materials used in the construction of the Tower of Babel.
So let's just slather it on dead people too.
Yep,
Why
yep.
not?
Bitumen is made through a process that distills crude oil, which removes the lighter liquids and just leaves the bitumen behind. So
Okay.
you're essentially pulling much of the moisture out of it and just leaving this like thick tar type substance.
Got it.
In fact, the process of using natural bitumen for adhesive and waterproofing dates as far back as the 5th millennium BCE. The ancient Sumerians would use it during construction to build homes out of bricks, since it hardens when it dries, as well as using it like glue to attach things to statues. Uses are endless.
Okay.
So, how did it make its way into the medical lexicon? Pliny the Elder included the use of bitumen in natural history, saying that it was great for driving away snakes, treating leprosy, healing wounds, stopping bleeding, curing cataracts, halting epilepsy, as well as treating gout and fever.
Hmm.
Not only that, but if you mixed it with soda, it could numb your toothache.
I'm sure it could. It was a filling.
Yeah,
You made a filling.
congratulations.
Yeah, you made cement.
If you mix it with a little wine, it can cure your cough, help with shortness of breath, and even help you with a nasty case of diarrhea.
Yeah, 'cause it clogs you up.
Mhm.
Clogs up those pipes so you can't cough.
Mixed with vinegar, it was said to be able to dissolve and remove blood clots.
Yeah, I bet. I bet it burned through more than that too.
But the coolest of all, if you made a poultice of bitumen and barley flour, you could reattach severed muscles and even stabilize broken bones.
Yeah, 'cause you're making cement. Yeasty cement.
Bitumen was used in ancient Persia in poultices, as it was believed that it could help bones heal faster, that it could cure respiratory diseases, fix contusions, and even help with gastrointestinal issues like dysentery.
Hmm.
Naturally occurring bitumen was abundant in the ancient Middle East, formed from the remains of tiny plants and animals. It also came in a few different states, from semi-liquid all the way to semi-solid.
Yeah. That makes sense depending on like where it was stored, where they found it.
Mhm. Greek physician Dioscorides noted in his first century Pharmacopoeia, Materia Medica, that the bitumen from the Dead Sea was the best naturally occurring version to use medicinally.
That makes sense. The salt water would sanitize it naturally.
It wouldn't be until centuries later that scientists would discover bitumen has antimicrobial and biocidal properties, And the kind specifically from the Dead Sea also contains sulfur, which has a biocidal agent, which means it's intended to prevent harmful or undesired organisms, and today is commonly found in disinfectants and insect repellents.
That makes sense.
Okay, so here's where the Egyptians come in.
Hmm.
Are you ready?
I'm so ready. They were such a phenomenally fascinating era of people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, truly.
Mm-hmm.
So innovative, but so off at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Bitumen was a key ingredient in the embalming process of mummies in Egypt. The Egyptians would get their natural source from the Dead Sea, and Rhazes, a Baghdad physician from the 11th century, has been credited for the earliest usage of mummia in relation to a substance made from bitumen. In this case, bitumen was used to protect the deceased from moisture, bacteria, insects, and fungi. Additionally, thanks to its antimicrobial properties, it also helped prevent decay.
It makes sense now why mummies would be as well preserved as they are today if this substance existed anywhere on their
Mm-hmm.
body. Like, it would help preserve whatever it touches.
Yep.
And it would probably preserve better the more intact and less mixed the form is, too.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense now. It helps my like elementary school brain of like
Yes.
never understanding why the mummies were so intact, whereas like you would go to a graveyard and they were already gone, just
Mm-hmm.
bones.
Now, remember how I said that a bad translation caused people to think that eating mummies was a great medicinal cure? That's thanks to the translation work of Gerard of Cremona, who in the 12th century translated Roz's work, in which he didn't specify if mumia was like a natural kind of tar bitumen or a dead embalmed Egyptian.
Way to go, Jerry.
God, really? In fact, thanks to Gerard, mumia was translated as, quote, the substance found in the land where bodies are buried with aloes, by which the liquid of the dead, mixed with the aloes, is transformed, and it is similar to marine pitch, end quote.
No, it's not. No, it's not. You better spell check that. Where's Clippy?
Yeah.
Clippy would never. He would have caught that.
Are you trying to write a research paper?
The ancient peoples disabled Clippy, and that's why they ended up eating people for so long. Ignoring Clippy leads to cannibalism.
You heard it here first.
That's definitely going to be on the Twitter out of context.
But it wasn't just Gerard who got things wrong. No. Many ancient scholars got it wrong as well.
Oh yeah, because they didn't double check Jerry's work.
Constantinus Africanus noted something close to Gerard's translation, which was then used by Matthias Platerius of Salerno. Matthias wrote, quote, "Mumia is a spice found in the sepulchres of the dead," end quote.
It's a spice now.
Mm-hmm. To an extent, Matthias was right. Herodotus named, and again, I am not good with names. I am trying my best.
It's difficult when you've got ancient peoples mixed.
Yeah.
Because you never
So,
quite know, too, if even our translation is accurate. Like
yeah,
if the phonetics are the same.
I am very aware that I'm probably getting all of these wrong. If you can very nicely tell me that I'm doing it wrong, I appreciate it. But please don't like lambast me on social and be like, this girl is
She's
dumb.
so dumb. Here are all the ways to say it right, you dumb dummy.
Yeah. Herodotus named in the 5th century BCE that the earliest embalming materials were made of myrrh, cassia, cedar oil, gum, aromatic spices, and natron. It wasn't until later, in the 1st century BCE, that Diodorus Siculus added the materials of cinnamon and Dead Sea bitumen to the list, speaking at
Mm.
length about the supplies coming out of Babylonia.
Okay.
Because at this time, there was like huge supplies of natural bitumen that were
Oh, I
coming from
bet.
the Middle East.
Hmm.
14th century physician Matthias Silvaticus wrote that mummia, quote, is that which is found in the tombs of those embalmed, in which the fluid of the corpse dissolves with the aloes and myrrh with which the body is preserved, end quote.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, I'm saying that many people believed that the excretions from ancient Egyptians could be used as medicine, as they included a mix of herbs as well as bitumen. However, bitumen wasn't used in the original embalming process until much later, around 1000 BCE.
So almost 1,000 years later.
Yes. In fact, the reason that many earlier mummies changed color and sometimes looked black was because they had been preserved with a cheaper substance, such as resins and other materials that would naturally darken as they aged.
Mm.
Because,
Okay.
fun fact, the mummies that people were ingesting weren't long dead pharaohs and Egyptian royalty.
They're probably fresh.
They were just commoners, which I think is even
Mhm.
sadder.
Instead of eating the rich, you're eating the poor. The rich are eating the poor.
Literally.
That's terrifying. I don't like it.
For several hundred years, with the height taking place in the 16th and 17th centuries, a large number of Europeans, primarily the upper crust of society, so your royals, your
Mm.
priests, and your scientists, would regularly take medicinal remedies that had been made with the fat, blood, and bones of humans. But why?
Great.
It was believed that these remedies could cure everything from headaches to epilepsy, and to an extent, the practice of purchasing and eating mummies from Egypt shouldn't be seen as that large of a leap, considering the practice of grave robbing was a pretty common one in the UK for many, many years.
Yeah. I feel like in general, just overall respect of a dead body has not really been a thing
Mm-mm.
ever, despite
Yeah,
what we want it to be.
yeah.
So,
The use of mummia as a cure-all didn't come to Europe until the Crusades, and the demand for it increased exponentially in the 11th century, since natural stores of bitumen from Persia and the Dead Sea were limited around the turn of the 12th century.
yeah.
Persian physician Avicenna started to use the term mumia in the 11th century, specifically in reference to medicinal bitumen for the treatment of paralysis, skin eruptions, abscesses, concussions, afflictions of the throat, lungs, heart, and stomach, as well as disorders of the liver and spleen.
Hmm.
It was also rumored as an antidote for poisons.
Yeah, it just, I mean, it sounds like it's more like charcoal. It just kind of absorbs everything.
Yep,
So
yeah,
it becomes toxic by
yeah.
absorbing all the toxic stuff.
Fun fact, you could use the quote unquote elixir of the mummy to cure the plague.
I bet you could.
And here's the recipe.
Oh, okay.
Quote, artificial mummy cut small, to which put spirit of turpentine, putrefy it 40 days in a vessel close lidded, strain it and put it into a bladder with spirit of wine, digest, and in an alembic in sand, draw off the quintessence of the spirit, which separate the feces, reverberate, and sublime to a salt, which unite with the separated quintessence by circulation, then digest this quintessence with treacle and musk to an elixir. End quote.
It wouldn't work. It takes 40 days just to ferment. You'd die of the plague way before
Yeah,
your little poultice would be ready.
It's also asking you to like eat feces. So
Yeah.
I'm good.
And then hope that the poop runs through your blood directly?
I don't know.
Yeah, you die if you're can't mix poop and blood.
Demand grew to the point that if you visited Cairo, you could just purchase mummies on the street.
Of course you could. Grave robbing. It's the same thing.
hmm
They're not people anymore, they're mummies.
A physician in Baghdad named Abed al-Latif al-Baghdadi noted that large amounts of mummia, quote, could be found in the heads and bellies of these corpses, and that you could purchase it for a reasonable rate, end quote.
Hmm.
Body snatching became a popular practice in Cairo in the 1400s, where people would break into tombs and steal bodies in order to boil them, selling whatever oil floated to the top to people who would pay top dollar for it.
Gross.
And it wasn't just ancient mummies that would be sold.
Of course not.
Bodies of unfortunate people that had been caught up in sandstorms were also ground up and sold as mummia under the guise that the dry heat had purified them.
I hate all of this.
When it comes to the embalmed remains of mummies, the different parts of the body could be used for a variety of ailments. For example, parts of a mummy could be crumbled and added to tinctures that would be used to stop internal bleeding. Powdered skull was one of the most common ingredients, used to, of all things, cure head ailments.
Hmm.
In the 16th century, if you were a person of means, you could walk into your local apothecary to stock up on powdered or just broken pieces of Egyptian mummies. They were,
Great.
after all, a key ingredient to treat wounds, coughs, cataracts, toothaches, leprosy, epileptic episodes, hysteria, and could even be used cosmetically to straighten out your eyelashes.
Well, we use bat poop now, so.
Yeah. Fun fact. Some powerful people in Europe, such as Catherine de' Medici, the queen consort of France, even sent her physician to Egypt in 1549 to get her a personal supply.
Of course.
Many Europeans visited Egypt in the 16th century as well, noting what they saw regarding the mummia trade. Of course, one fact that tends to get glossed over is that mummies weren't actually supposed to be exported at all. It was forbidden.
Right, because you're grinding up people and distributing them.
But that didn't stop thousands upon thousands of pounds of mummified remains from making their way to pharmacies and apothecaries in Europe.
Right.
In fact, merchants in Spain, France, Germany, and the UK were making bank shipping mummies out of Alexandria and Cairo. In 1586, an English merchant for the Turkey Company named John Sanderson was able to smuggle 600 pounds of mummy parts back to Europe from an Egyptian tomb.
Hmm.
He notes, quote, "We were let down by ropes as into a well, with wax candles burning in our hands, and so walked upon the bodies of all sorts and sizes, some great and small. They have no noisome smell at all, but are like pitch being broken. For I broke off all the parts of the bodies to see how the flesh was turned into drug, and brought home diverse head, hands, arms, and feet for a show. We brought also 600 pounds, together with a whole body. They are lapped in above 100 double of cloth, which rotting and peeling off, you may see the skin, flesh, fingers, and nails firm, only altered black." End quote.
I hate all of that. He's so proud of himself for just like hand picking body parts to bring back.
hmm It got to the point that there weren't enough mummies to meet the demand.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's kind of a natural progression of stuff like this too, which is why then executions and like harsher punishments for crimes become more of the norm
hmm
so that you can make more bodies to meet the demand.
Yep. Enter fraudulent mummy making.
Yeah.
The bodies of slaves, People who had been executed, people who passed from
Mm-hmm.
leprosy and the plague, hell, even
Yeah.
people who were already mostly rotted were being embalmed with cheap asphalt to turn a profit.
Yep.
They were often opened, filled with bitumen, wrapped up, and then left to dry in the sun.
Mm,
Merchants also would sometimes use the toasted flesh of camels as a substitute for humans.
cute. If this isn't bad enough, let's just start harming animals too.
Yeah. I'm hoping that in the case with the camels, they were already dead and they were like, let's just.
Maybe. I think they probably started that way.
Guy de la Fontaine, doctor of the King of Navarre in 1564, noted during his trip to Alexandria in Egypt, quote, the bodies, now mummia, had been those of slaves and other dead persons, young and old, male and female, which he had indiscriminately collected. The merchant cared not what diseases had caused the deaths, since when embalmed, no one could tell the difference, end quote.
I hate it. I hate it.
And in this case, the merchant that he was talking to had said that he had 40 mummies that he had started producing 5 years before.
No.
Johann Schroeder, physician pharmacologist and the first person to recognize that arsenic is an element,
Mm.
fun fact, advocated the practice of taking medicine made, quote, from the cadaver of a reddish man, because in such a man the blood is believed to be lighter, and so the flesh is better, whole, fresh, without blemish, of around 24 years of age, dead of a violent death, not of illness, exposed to the moon's rays for 1 day and 1 night. The flesh should be treated so that it resembles smoke-cured meat without any stench, end quote.
Yeah, that's a terrifying man.
Mm-hmm.
It's a man I would never wish to meet ever.
Mm-hmm.
That is ye old Jeffrey Dahmer, my friends.
Yep. Oswald Kroll, professor of medicine at the University of Marburg, noted that mumia should be acquired from, quote, the flesh of a man that perishes a violent death, end quote. In fact, his recipe calls for the body of a young man, specifically a redhead, who had been bludgeoned on a breaking wheel, hanged, and exposed to the air for several days. After this, the flesh should be chopped into small pieces before being sprinkled with aloes and powdered myrrh, then marinated in wine before it is dried, and then finally consumed.
What the fuck? Like they're just literally writing out little fantasies of how they want to kill and eat people.
Mm-hmm.
This is just cannibals living their best lives in
Yep.
the open. Great.
Europe would soon develop a fondness for corpse medicine, which could include blood, powdered skull, fat, menstrual blood, placenta, earwax, brain, urine, and even fecal matter.
And they wonder why we have so many weird diseases in like just white people. Exhibit A. We thought we were so cool and highfalutin. This is why I have diabetes now.
17th century scientist Thomas Willis, who would go on to be best known for his research into the human brain, would often
Hmm.
prepare a mixture of powdered human skull and chocolate that was believed to treat apoplexy or bleeding.
I mean, if I had to do any of it, having it mixed with chocolate would be better.
Yeah.
Although I think I would just rather die. I
Yeah.
think I'd rather just be part of the medicine later. If I'm
Yeah.
honest. Just let me be one of the poor people that gets ground up to make
Yeah.
this fucked up bread.
King Charles II of England had his own personal tincture, known as the King's Drops, that consisted of a powdered human skull mixed with alcohol.
Did they distill it themselves? The
I
alcohol?
don't know, but I'm sure they did if it was for King Charles. Fun fact, buried skulls, after enough time, can grow
Mm,
moss, like a furry green toupee.
yeah,
That would also be used in medicine.
of course.
Named usnea, It became a highly sought after ingredient to treat epilepsy and cure nosebleeds.
Hmm.
Another treatment for epilepsy, developed in 1643, consisted of the unburied skulls of three men who had died a violent death.
Of course, it was violent.
This makes me think that they're like just murdering people for medicine. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. Like certain like thunderdomes and stuff are just for medicine.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, this here's your ginger. We gave the other guy like four more advantages, so you can for sure get your ginger skull today, my lord.
Yep. You're
So
welcome.
so fucked up.
Human fat was often used to treat external wounds. German doctors would regularly soak bandages in human fat and use those bandages to treat gout by wrapping the afflicted appendage or wrap it around the neck to prevent thyroid issues.
Hmm. Yes, because just choking out your thyroid will make it work.
Yeah, make it greasy while you're at it.
Hmm.
In the 17th and 18th centuries, apothecaries would sell it as a remedy for rabies, inflammation, pain, joint problems, and even to cure scars. Pregnant women would also use it to reduce the pain of childbirth by placing it on their belly.
Hmm. It just kind of makes me sad.
Yeah. Blood, specifically human blood, has often been portrayed as having almost supernatural powers depending on what type of media you indulge in.
True.
From the life giving food source of vampires to the rejuvenating properties rumored to be used by the Blood Countess herself, it shouldn't surprise you to learn that it was also used medicinally. Paracelsus, a 16th century German Swiss physician, believed that fresh blood was best used by ingesting it as a drink. Since most people aren't willing to let you just tap them for a finger's worth of blood,
Right.
it wasn't uncommon for the pauper class to hang out at executions to pay a small amount for a cup of blood from the condemned. As we've discussed in the past, being an executioner wasn't an ideal profession, as you were essentially seen as a social pariah.
Hmm.
However, in Germanic countries in the 16th century, they were also seen as a medicinal drug dealer, giving them almost mystical powers.
Of course.
Now, if drinking blood isn't really your cup of tea, haha, pun, a Franciscan apothecary did write down a recipe in 1679 on how you can make it into marmalade.
Of course. I bet it was really, really easy to congeal. They have, what do they have, blood sausage?
Yes, that's still very
They've
much a
been
thing.
doing it for a long time.
Yep. This still begs the question, why did anyone think these would work?
Desperation, boredom, vanity.
If you boil it down to its most basic principle, pun intended, consuming blood theoretically should fix any blood disorders you have.
Yeah,
Ingesting a tincture of powdered human skull should fix a headache, right?
yeah.
So, viewed in a homeopathic context, or sympathetic magic, as it is called,
Sympathetic magic.
yeah, you can kind of see where these ancient healers were coming from with their cure alls. Blood was believed to be the conduit of the soul, so ingesting fresh blood was like taking on the power or life force of the one you consumed. Fresh
Mm,
blood was the best, preferably from a young man, but of course, the blood of young virgin women was also highly sought after.
right. Of course.
This concept has been around for much longer than the medieval times. The
Mm,
Romans were known to drink the blood of the gladiators they killed in order to absorb the vitality of other strong men. Sort of the
okay.
same concept as to when they would collect the sweat of a victorious gladiator and sell it as an aphrodisiac.
Yeah. I mean, we still do stuff like that today.
The use of body parts for medicinal reasons also isn't just a European thing.
Hmm.
Many other cultures, including those in ancient Mesopotamia and India, would also see their healers using parts of the human body to treat the ailments of the living. In China, as far back as the Tang Dynasty, or 618 to 907 CE, There's more than 110 cases of young women voluntarily removing flesh from their own bodies, typically the upper arm or upper thigh, to feed to their ill parents or in-laws to cure disease.
That's so awful. And what a sacrifice too. Like you would genuinely think those poor people, like how much did they like destroy their own bodies in the pursuit of futilely trying to save the people they loved?
Hmm.
And why do people want to go back to that? Like, why are so many people like, it'd be so fun? No,
No,
it's
it
not.
wouldn't.
It's not. I promise you, even if you were a privileged white man, you still get murdered. Like, there's still no guarantee because you might not be the right white man.
Hmm.
Right place, wrong, right place, wrong white.
Yes. And chances are much higher that you would be the wrong white man. You would be,
Super high because it was like even like you could look too Scottish. Done. You're
yep.
just a little too German. Done. You're just a little like you're not.
If you
Yeah.
got red hair, don't go back.
If
Don't go
you
back.
look mixed at all, we'd go back and we'd all be too tall too.
Yep.
So there's just so many.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know this. I know it's not done. I just needed to be on that tangent because.
Yeah. It wasn't until the Renaissance that scholars and physicians started to question the effectiveness of mummia.
Good.
Mummia had become so ingrained into the culture of the time that even Shakespeare makes mention of it in a number of his writings.
Yeah, I bet if it was just popular at the time.
Hmm. So, why were people so okay with practicing cannibalism? Because, in the minds of the Europeans taking part in the practice, the human beings they were ingesting were simply seen as another ingredient in whatever medicine they would be told to take, no different than a plant or animal byproduct.
Right. It wasn't a person anymore at that point. They saw it as just a substance.
Hmm. The practice of cannibalistic medicine began to dwindle in the 18th century, when Europeans started to regularly bathe with soap and use utensils like forks instead of their dirty hands for eating. Not to mention, popular opinion on the effectiveness of mumia had started to dwindle. This doesn't mean that the practice was abolished entirely. There were still some later examples, such as that of an Englishman in 1847 who was told to create a mixture of molasses and the powdered skull of a young woman to feed to his daughter to cure her epilepsy.
Mm,
Spoiler alert, it didn't work.
right?
Other examples include the belief in the power of the thieves' candle, which was made from human fat. It was believed up until the 1880s that it had the power to stupefy and paralyze a person.
Stop. 1880s?
Yeah.
And they still had Harry Potter notions?
Yep.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. In the 20th century, so this is the 1900s, mummy was listed as medicine in a German medical catalog from a pharmaceutical company called Firma E. Merck. In fact, up until 1924, you could purchase a kilo of mummia for 12 gold marks.
I hate that. Honestly, I bet if you really looked hard enough, you could probably find it today.
Oh, probably. Fun fact, people didn't just ingest mummies, they were also used as a popular paint pigment.
Of course. Why not? Why not smear grandma on your walls?
From the 16th to the 19th centuries, many painters preferred to use it, and it remained available well into the 20th century.
So, how many famous paintings have bodies on them?
We'll get to that.
Uh huh.
A London pigment dealer noted in 1915 that one mummy could create 20 years' worth of pigment for himself and his customers.
How many famous paintings are made with the bodies of others, Lindsay?
Artists such as Eugene Delacroix, Sir
Mm-hmm.
Lawrence Alma Tadema, and Edward Burne-Jones would use the pigment primarily for shading, although ironically, it was also used for flesh tones
Yeah.
because it's mummy brown.
Great. Great. Is the Mona Lisa made out of people, Lindsay?
No, it's not.
Okay.
No, it's not.
She's
Fun
safe.
fact, Edward Burne-Jones was so horrified when he learned that the pigment was made from human remains that he buried the remainder of his supply.
Yeah, I bet. Because if you had any sort of qualms about harming remains, people's bodies, like, because it is incredibly sacred in a lot of
Mhm.
cultures, and I think
Mhm.
it would probably be even more so then.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you'd be just horrified. You'd be like, I'm going to hell just because I bought these.
Yeah. Fun fact.
Oh God, none of these have been fun.
That's the beauty of the fun fact.
Uh-huh.
Following the French Revolution, the government ordered that royal sepulchres be destroyed. This resulted in the bodies of several royals being taken from their tombs and thrown into pits before being covered in quicklime. That didn't stop some workmen from taking some quote unquote souvenirs, such as Henry III's teeth, Philippe Auguste's hair, not to mention one of Catherine de' Medici's arms.
The arm was a bold choice. I
Yeah.
mean, just a little bit of hair being gone, sure, but like a whole arm? Nobody noticed
Yeah.
that.
It's believed that some of these royal remains ended up being transformed into mummy brown paint.
They were the first ones.
And lastly, the practice of mummy unwrapping became popular in the Victorian era following Napoleon's visit to Egypt at the turn of the 19th century.
Of course.
It was quite the social affair to attend an
Mm,
unwrapping, which would
I'm sure.
consist of an expert, usually a doctor or an academic, removing the mummy's bandages in front of a rapt audience.
A wrapped audience, would they be wrapped as well? And they'd unwrap themselves too.
That'd be funny. It was quite the experience to closely examine the bones, hair, and jewelry of the dead.
I'm sure it was incredibly fascinating, but like, what an invasion of privacy.
hmm Well, and at this point in history, like it was considered like a sign of your wealth and influence if you had actual like mummies just in your house. Like if you could
Oh, I'm sure,
afford.
like, you were harboring bodies. You bought people.
hmm
Like, I'm so wealthy, I can purchase people whether they're living or not.
hmm Most unwrappings would be conducted in an academic setting, such as London's Charing Cross Hospital. Thomas Pettigrew, a surgeon, author, and antiquarian, conducted many autopsies in the lecture theater there. In fact, by 1848, he is believed to have unrolled as many as 50 mummies at a mix of private gatherings and public exhibitions.
I hate it. I just hate it so much.
And that is the history of mummy medicine.
And all of this could have been avoided.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm sure it would have happened eventually. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think too, there's such a fascination on either side as well of like, why do you do what you do? Why do we do what we do?
hmm
So I think there would have been, if not this, something else.
hmm If you want to learn much more about this topic, I would recommend checking out the links in our show notes. There are some academic papers that dived much deeper into it than I did, but I also didn't want this to be like a 3-hour long episode, so.
That's fair.
If you want a playlist of all our episodes on YouTube, click the link in our show notes or in our link tree and subscribe today for not only a list of our full catalog, but a separate list as well, just of our Can You Crack the Cramp Word segments.
Welcome to Creepy Tapas. The show where two spooky best friends give you tiny tastes of terror connected by a common ingredient.
We serve up movie reviews, mysteries, murder, mayhem, and tantalizing tales from the depths of the internet. And some random bullshit too, all focused around a similar theme.
We blend our love of horror, oddities, and general creepiness and dig a little deeper, discovering the history, psychology, and truth behind your wildest fears.
Join us, Ash and Jordan, as we descend into full darkness every Sunday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's Creepy Tapas, y'all.
What?
Proud members of the Darkcast Network.
And this week's podcast plug is the Creepy Tapas Podcast, a horror podcast where hosts Ash and Jordan serve up tiny tastes of terror with a new theme each week. What real horror lies beyond the imagination? How much reality inspires the creepiest of creeps? And we will have a link to their show in the show notes.
Awesome.
And Carrie Ann did send us a question.
Yay.
If you could join Doctor Who in an adventure, who would be your Doctor Who and where would you go?
Matt Smith, and we would go on a meeting with the Daleks because I feel like I could be like their firefly or their fruit fly. Like with and I could just become their ambassador.
I admittedly do not watch Doctor Who. I don't think I've ever seen an episode, but in talking with our friends over at the Everyone Dies in Sunderland podcast, specifically Gareth.
Shout out, Gareth.
Shout out to Gareth. I would choose David Tennant as my doctor, and we would go visit Lady Cassandra because I would enjoy talking to a sheet of human flesh.
She's really mean. I mean, of course the Daleks are too. Everybody's really mean in Doctor Who, actually.
So I just think that would be fun.
Yeah, I just want to be the mouth of the Daleks and just be really mean. Because I don't get to be mean in my normal life. It'd be really fun.
This is true. It's not really socially acceptable to be really
just threaten
mean.
people all the time. Just be like a constant threat.
Yeah. Fair. On that note, what's something good you'd like to share?
Something good I'd like to share is something that happened yesterday, actually. So we've had some car trouble. We have a car in the shop right now. And our other car is complicated to swap drivers because one of our dogs, they may not be named, chewed through the seatbelt of the driver and the passenger seats. And so now we have this weird like safety harness thing kind of in the interim. And so because of this, I wasn't going to be able to go to our parents' house for Father's Day. And that's something that like I haven't missed unless it was for work for years. And I felt really bad about it. And my partner fit me to the truck so that I could make it work. And I was able to get to their house just in time to surprise them by making a quiche because Dad loves a good quiche Lorraine.
Nice.
And so I had caught them in the middle of breakfast. They were just about to start making pancakes, like making the mix for it. And I bust out their door. And I was like, don't make anything for breakfast. I'm going to make you a quiche. And our parents took a second. Like they were so surprised that somebody came through the door. They just didn't do anything for a minute. And then they went, ugh.
Brother, ugh.
Yeah, it was just a really cute surprise, and it was a delicious quiche, and it was a little too hot to go on like the walk that I had hoped we could go on by the lake, so we'll just do a whenever I can to get over there. So an IOU walk around the lake, looking for turtles, scoping out the turtles.
I love turtles.
I do too. My partner did promise that we could eventually get a tortoise.
I'm so jealous.
I know. I need to find my perfect tortoise, and they can just like live in our basement that's like it's a full basement, and we could just like make it
Tortoise sanctuary.
just a tortoise destination.
There you go.
Everything the tortoise might want, just down there. But yeah, that's my something good. What about you?
My something good is yesterday I went to have my 6-week follow-up appointment with the surgeon for my foot, and he is pleased with my progress healing so far. So I have been cleared
Yay!
to walk however I feel like walking. I have to go back again in like another month.
To make sure your non-restrictions didn't damage anything.
Well, because by that point, the calcium should have started to kind of fill in the gaps in the bone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I would be, quote unquote, like cleared as fully healed or whatever. And that's
Okay.
when we could discuss when I want to do the next procedure. And right now, I'm thinking of potentially doing it in the fall, just because I want to have the rest of my summer. But we'll see. So that's something that I'll discuss
Yeah.
with him next month at my appointment on his recommendation.
Doing it within the same year should be okay. I don't think that would throw you off too much. But yeah, having some time between.
Yeah, his big thing is he wants to make sure that my foot is fully healed because it will become a load-bearing foot. So he's like, I don't want
Yep,
you to have the other
that makes
surgery
sense.
when your other foot isn't fully healed and then you end up screwing up both feet. It's like,
Mm.
we don't want that to happen. And I was like, that makes perfect sense.
And it's something you don't really think about. Like, just because you're cleared on paper doesn't mean it's ready.
Yeah. It was very satisfying returning that stupid scooter
I bet.
to the medical equipment rental place.
It's too bad you couldn't office space it.
They were like, "Oh God, another one," and I said, "What do you mean, oh God, another one?" And they're like, "We've had so many returned recently that we've had to like start sending them to St. Paul," which was interesting because when I had my surgery, we had to reserve one because they didn't have any. So
That is interesting. There must have just been a ton of surgeries.
yeah, there must have been a lot at the same time. But I was like, "Yeah, you can have it back. I hated this thing. This thing is garbage. Like, it is
Yeah.
the worst." And they were like, "Oh, yeah, we know. We know. They suck." I was like, "Why hasn't somebody fixed this? Make off-roading wheels. Put shocks in these things because they do not do well on any surface that is not smooth or carpet. And even carpet, sometimes they don't do that well."
That's so annoying. That's so annoying.
$1 million idea. Someone fix that and give me credit.
Somebody has, and then a corporation purchased the patent that then they just buried it.
Like the E.T. Atari game. They just
Mhm.
buried it in a hole in the desert.
Mhm.
Anyway, shall we?
We shall.
A great way to support the show if you want to help us out, but you can't do so financially, is to leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Good Pods, Castbox, Podcast Addict, and or Audible. Got something you want to say? Shoot us an email over at yeoldcrimepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your story ideas, see any gifts you send our way, or if you just want to say hello. We're pretty friendly. Speaking of friendly, if you'd like to have real-time conversations with us, consider joining our Discord over at the Cultivate Network. You can chat with us over at the Old Crimers Cubby, or catch up with any of the other great creators that are part of the Cultivate family of podcasts. Just click the link in our show notes or over on our link tree to get started today. There is also currently a sale over at our TeePublic shop. You can enjoy up to 40% off June
Dang.
21st through the 24th. As a reminder, we have our Pride merch out, and you can also purchase our designs on hats, which is super fun.
That's so cool. Yeah, having it on a hat would be fun.
And on that note, as always, I'm Lindsay,
And I'm Madison,
and we'll see you next time with another tale
as old as crime.